Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Resilient Health Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Darin Ingels. And if you follow me, I talk about my own experience with Lyme disease, and I've treated thousands of people with Lyme disease. It's the fastest growing infectious disease in the world. In the United States, it affects more than 476,000 new patients every single year. So you can do the math, and it's now affecting literally millions and millions of people, not just in the United States, but really around the world. And, I think in my own struggles of dealing with Lyme, and again, in all the patients I've treated, we come across so much negative press out there about what Lyme disease is and how each person's impacted by it. And honestly, I've been on Facebook groups and a lot of social media platforms. And if you spend a lot of time on these platforms in different Lyme groups, you might get the sense that people never ever get better. And so my guest today is Shawna Hollman. And Shawna and I have been working together for, I don't know, maybe it's been about a year and a half or almost 2 years-ish. And she is, one of my success stories. And so I just thought it'd be really great if Shawna could come on today and share a little bit about her experience of dealing with Lyme disease. And, we'll get into, a little bit more about, her story and, how she's dealt with her family. Because, I know so many of you, it's not just about how it's impacting you, it's everyone around you who's, your kids, your spouse, your loved ones. It impacts everyone in your world. So, Shawna, thank you so much for taking time out to talk with me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So, maybe just start off and start, sharing a little bit about, when things started to change with your health. What were some of the first things you noticed and how did it progress?
Some of the symptoms, I don't know how much they're connected or not, but some of the things started with me probably like in my late teens, early 20s, and I just didn't know what they were. Looking back, obviously, you can start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, but they were just funky things that shouldn't be happening to somebody at that age, like getting really weird joint pain that didn't make sense, coming out of nowhere with no injury, and then would kind of go away on its own and pop up in another joint at another time, heart palpitations, things like that. And I did see the doctor for some of that and never got any answers. So just kind of put it on the back burner until something else popped up. And that went on really over the years and different things coming up here and there. And I mean, it just never went away. It was always something new. I ended up having more like chronic health issues. Gosh, how old was I then? I would say in like 2008, I started getting like chronic migraines or sinus infections. No one could ever really tell me what they were, but we tried a whole bunch of different things to treat them, conventional medicine, and nothing really ever made it better. They just got more frequent and more painful. And my health kept just kind of spiraling downward slowly. And I didn't even really know that that was happening. And I think that my immune system just tanked from all the interventions that included, antibiotics over and over, steroids over and over, and just nothing really getting better till I was in pain for the last year of that. From like 2012 to 2013, there was not a moment of a day that I was not in pain. It just kind of fluctuated how bad it was at certain points. And then while I was on antibiotics and steroids again for these things, I ended up getting an infection in my, just from a little tiny hangnail. I got MRSA and sepsis and ended up on a week of IV antibiotics, and I was still in pain, even on these IV antibiotics and everything. Nothing was making my headaches feel any better. And yeah, that's when I decided I needed to do something else. And I made a lot of changes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, to your point, I think this is a common story. People who have these ongoing, collection of symptoms that go on for often years.
Mhm.
And again, they've gone to the doctor, you've gone to the specialist, you've seen the neurologist, the rheumatologist, what
Yeah.
other ologist gets lined up. And, everything on paper, your blood tests look normal, your MRI often looks normal. So it's just so common that people go through this litany of different tests,
Mhm.
and on paper everything kind of looks pretty good.
Yeah.
uh, but this is why they call Lyme the great imitator, the great mimic. It looks like so many things. And I've talked about this on previous podcasts. When I moved to California, because I lived in Connecticut for 18 years, where Lyme disease is named after Lyme, Connecticut. I lived 30 minutes down the road from Lyme, Connecticut when I got Lyme. But I came out to California and I was really surprised at the number of doctors, healthcare providers that were really unaware of Lyme. And in fact, I had one doctor tell a patient that there's no. I had multiple doctors actually tell patients there's no Lyme disease in California. I had one doctor tell a patient there's no deer in California, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But this is kind of what the Lyme community are running up against, is that we have the people who really should be the experts in Lyme being very unaware of what it is, what it looks like, and this idea that Lyme's really only in New England or the central part of the Midwest. We had a study done out in California last year. They were looking at ticks on the beaches of California and found these ticks do indeed carry Lyme disease. So this idea that you live in a state that's not necessarily known to be endemic for Lyme kind of doesn't matter. It's really been reported in all 50 states, certainly California, and even according to the CDC, California is the 5th fastest growing state for Lyme disease. So, it's just so frustrating when, you're trying to get help and you keep going to the doctor over and over and
Yeah.
coming up empty-handed.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happened. Lyme was not even on my radar when I started making changes back in 2013. I didn't really know anything about it. I had heard of it. I didn't have any idea that that could be something that I was struggling with at that point, but I just made changes and saw a big change in my health. I think that most all of my symptoms pretty much went away with like diet and lifestyle changes at that point. And I can't remember really having any symptoms pop up for several years. It wasn't until I had 2 kids pretty much back to back. They're 16 months apart. And when the youngest was still a baby, I started getting new symptoms with like some vertigo and neuropathy, like dropping things, and my migraines coming back and things like that. And I ended up back at the doctors, chasing different doctor this, doctor that, trying to figure out what's going on, a lot of neurologists and things, because it looked like MS.
Yeah.
We were pretty certain that I was braced for that diagnosis and went through the MRIs and everything, and it wasn't MS. And that's when Lyme went on my radar, because it was like the only other thing that could make sense. It was like this, everything points to MS, but it wasn't. And that's when I found out that chronic Lyme can look like that. And it was at that point that I decided I should probably pursue answers in that, but I didn't know where to get answers, because like you're talking about, that most conventional doctors that I talked to didn't even believe that chronic Lyme exists. So I didn't know, I knew I needed to find somebody who understood Lyme, believed in chronic Lyme, and had real answers for me. Also, that didn't include just putting me back on antibiotics, because that did not work for me. And I was not about to wreck my body again, because I had just spent so much time healing. So that was in 2018 that I ruled out MS, but then my symptoms went away again. And then it wasn't until after I had like some pretty heavy trauma later in the year in 2018 and beginning of 2019 that some symptoms kind of came back. And then 2020, and then the stress and everything. And I think just from the stress and trauma that my symptoms kind of exploded again. And then it became like, this is serious. I really need to figure this out. And then I started asking friends who are in the more like holistic medical world, who know people and who are very talented at what they do. Like, somebody help me find someone who can actually tell me if this is Lyme or not. Like, this is the next thing I've got to rule out. And so it was in 2020 that I started pursuing that. And then that's when I found you.
Great. Well, you mentioned a little bit about, making diet changes, lifestyle changes. Can you share a little bit about, what sort of changes were you making?
Yeah, in the beginning, I had read a book by J.J. Virgin, actually, and it was what's it called? The Virgin Diet. So I found out about how foods can be inflammatory, foods that we eat every day that I had no idea could be problematic. They're, like eggs, wheat, things that I just was having all the time. And I never felt a reaction, like eat the food and then feel a reaction. So I didn't have any idea that they could be connected, but I did do the elimination diet. And within days, my symptoms were completely gone. And it just kind of opened my mind and my eyes to this whole world. And I just started reading ingredients on everything and just making little swaps here and there and making changes. That was, like I said, in 2013, just little bits at a time. But my symptoms just completely vanished. And I became like so excited about this. I just had to share it with everyone around me. Like, you guys know, like, this could be causing your this and that, because I just had no idea anything about inflammation. And so that's kind of how it got started. And it's been kind of like a little bit of a snowball ever since.
Well, I think it speaks to how powerful food really is. And I know, I think some of us have the experience of eating a food. We don't get anaphylactic reactions. We don't get true food allergies, but, we get these delayed reactions. And, we know from the research, the reaction can be delayed up to 3 days after you've eaten a food. So if you're
Yeah.
eating, tomatoes or potatoes or wheat or eggs or dairy, you may not feel it immediately, but a lot of the symptoms that often we chalk up to Lyme disease in some cases can actually be related to a food sensitivity. And I'm
Right.
always amazed, and I guess at this point I shouldn't be amazed anymore, but when we make, these very simple dietary changes and pull out, especially a lot of the common known food sensitivities like dairy, wheat, eggs, soy, things of that nature, how much better people feel, and often in a pretty short period of time.
Yeah.
You get rid of the offending agent, often within a matter of, even 2 to 3 weeks, people will notice improvement in their health.
Yeah, yeah, for me it was within a week or two that I could not believe the changes I felt in my body. It was very encouraging. Yeah. And then even when I did the, like you were saying, when I did the reintroduction, it took a full almost 24 hours for me to get a reaction when I did reintroduce the food. So it helped me also to be more aware of that. Like I'm not going to feel things always right away. It might take time for my body to react. So I need to pay attention.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about some of the lifestyle changes too.
In the beginning, I started making my own cleaning products because I found that to be easy and really affordable, and also just trying to navigate that in the grocery store. This is also 2013, but it's very complicated because these things have all these labels on the front, all these marketing claims, and they look good, and then you turn it around and you're like, what's all this junk inside of it? So it was very overwhelming for me to try and navigate which one of these are actually less toxic and which ones aren't. So I just started making my own, and so that was a big part of it too. And then it started to become, the personal care products and other things here and there. It wasn't until years later that I started making more like costly investments like the air purifier or the water filter, just because we couldn't afford it. We had to save up for those kinds of things. But I did a lot of really small budget friendly changes along the way, and those made a huge difference.
Yeah, I think so many people with any chronic illness, certainly chronic Lyme toxicity, is often a big obstacle to what stops people from getting well. And we're just bombarded with toxins in our world every day, from what we eat to what we breathe to what we drink to what we put on our skin and our hair. So lowering your toxic burden, which is what you've really done,
Yes.
again, it's just another pretty, I think, simple, inexpensive thing that anybody can do to help improve your health by just paying attention to what's on the back of the label, what are the ingredients. And it's funny because I mean you and I both know this too, that when it says natural, well, what's natural? It's pretty broad what's described as natural. There's a lot of really toxic things that are natural. That doesn't mean they're safe, and it's wise to put on your skin or use as a shampoo. So
Or
it's
they say poop is natural, so
exactly.
doesn't
So
mean I want it in my cleaning products.
I know. I mean, I often refer people to some place like, the Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, and safecosmetics.com. There's a lot of great online resources where you can do your own investigation on which products are really safe and which ones are really just marketing hype. Because again, there's a lot of garbage out there that gets pawned as being, safe for you and your family, and you come to find out that they put parabens, they put other phthalates, other kinds of chemicals that, again, it's the death by 1,000 cuts. It's
Yes.
like any one toxic exposure may not be enough for your body, but it's that accumulation that happens day after day after day, and particularly for something that you use on a daily basis. I mean, I've got family members that use like Glade plug-in sprays, and it's like, oh, it smells so good. I'm like, right, but it's not natural. It's formaldehyde and phenol and all these other toxic chemicals that you're now breathing in every single day or every time you walk in the room. So just swapping out those toxic things for non-toxic things can really, again, have a big impact on your health.
Absolutely. And the other way around too. The more of those things that we have in our health, there's a cumulative impact on how we feel.
Yeah. So, tell me a little bit too. I mean, you're also a mom of two small kids. You've got a husband. I mean, how was it going through this process, for your kids, for your husband, for other people in your life? How was that experience?
It's not been easy. I mean, my husband works full time. I run a business that I didn't intend to do. I'm not a business person, but this kind of is in my lap, and I'm trying to navigate how to do that. I'm homeschooling two kids. They're little, and I wasn't feeling well, and there is like a cost involved too. It's a physical, emotional, and financial cost, and I didn't feel like I had any of that to give, but there was really not much other option because I needed to feel well to be able to take care of my family and myself. And so it wasn't easy, but it was manageable, and we made it work, and it's been very, very well worth it.
Well, I got to give you a lot of credit. I mean, obviously, being your doctor and watching you and everything you've done, I mean, if I had, an ideal patient, I mean, you would be it because you did everything you were supposed to and beyond that. I mean, I look in terms of what you did with your diet, your lifestyle, reducing your toxicity, and some of the things I know you were doing sauna.
Yeah.
You're really helping with detoxification, dry brushing, uh, and when you start doing all these little things, again, it didn't happen quickly. I mean, we had a few setbacks over the course of time. Often timed in with stressful events or getting sick or some other thing that taxes your immune system. But it was again that three steps forward, one step back, three steps forward, one step back. Over
Yeah.
time, though, we finally got to a point where I think, I've officially now discharged you as a Lyme patient because, at this point, I think you're doing pretty well. So share with us, I mean, how are you feeling today?
I feel incredible. I mean, I haven't felt that. I'm going to cry. I have not felt this good in like 2 decades. I just turned 40, and I would anticipate like I would have like less energy and not be feeling great as this 40-year-old lady with two small children and all these things going on. But I honestly just feel so good, like clear-minded. There was a whole probably year and a half where I had this thing that I called fog fatigue that was like this would wash over me, like the curtains would close and it was just brain fog and fatigue all rolled into one, and I couldn't think straight, hold a conversation, just all these things. I have not had any of that in, gosh, almost a year. It'll be a year next month that went away. And I'm just, no, the joint pain. I mean, I feel good. I don't really know how to explain it, but I feel like I should feel. And I did not know that that was going to be really attainable for me.
Well, I'm just so thrilled that you've got your health back. You're doing everything you want to do, and you said you started your own business. So for those of you who are on Instagram, is Shawna runs A Little Less Toxic, and it's a fantastic site. I follow Shawna as well. I mean, a lot of great tips on. I mean, you're in the kitchen cooking, showing recipes, meals, non-toxic products, cleaning supplies, makeup. I think I've seen you kind of do it all. But if you guys are just looking for great tips on living a cleaner, healthier life, definitely you're going to want to follow Shawna at A Little Less Toxic, and we'll drop the link in the show notes. But there's a lot of really useful information, and I like it too because a lot of it is budget conscious. I know we're all mindful of budget, and of course you could go out and spend thousands of dollars on expensive air purifiers and water filters, and if you have the budget to do that, that's great. But I know so many of you don't necessarily have that at this point, so it's nice. What's that low hanging fruit? What are those little things that we can do every day to get ourselves better?
Yes. Yeah. The small things really add up and make a big difference.
So as a Lyme recoverer, for those again who are listening, before we close out, do you have any pearls of wisdom you'd like to share with people who are still in the struggle and are still dealing with their own Lyme?
I don't know. I think that my journey is probably not look like anyone else's. I wish I would have been able to tackle this years before, but we can't really beat ourselves up for what we didn't know. We can just take the information that we have now and then take the next best step. And whatever your next best step is going to look different from someone else's. There's no sense in comparing. It's just doing what you can with what you're able and as it makes sense for you, and just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and it will make a difference.
Yeah, and I agree. Everyone's Lyme journey is their own journey. It's really hard to compare yourself with anyone else. So don't look necessarily around to everyone around you who's going through their own struggle. Our bodies are different. Our environments are different. But again, I just want to offer a message of encouragement, again, as a Lyme recoverer myself, and Shawna as a Lyme recoverer, that it is possible. Everyone's journey is a little bit different, but if you're still in the fight, still in the struggle, hang in there. There is a potential end in sight, and if you found some ways that don't work for you, that's okay. I always say, Thomas Edison said, I found 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. It doesn't mean that there aren't other ways that's going to work better and for your body. So definitely keep searching for those right answers for you. And again, if you're not in the hands of a healthcare provider that's really aligned with where you're trying to achieve, definitely seek out someone who's Lyme literate, who really understands this illness and can give you really good guidance on getting through your Lyme journey. So Shawna, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you sharing your story of hope, and I wish you continued health success on your journey.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ingels.
Okay, thank you.